Starting with news from China, COVID-19 outbreak in Shanghai is spiraling. As the city is locked down entered its second week, military has now been sent to manage the outbreak. Over 2,000 personnel of medical services units affiliated with the Army, Navy and Joint Logistics Support Force have been dispatched to Shanghai. It is China's largest public health response since it tackled the initial COVID-19 outbreak in Wuhan. Over 10,000 medical workers from other provinces such as Jiangsu, Zhejiang and Beijing also arrived in Shanghai to help conduct testing, medical treatment and other efforts. Shanghai has reported 425 confirmed cases and over 8,000 asymptomatic cases over the last 24 hours. The city with 26 million people began lockdown last week. Residents are mostly confined to their homes and only allowed to leave for mass testing. Residents have also been asked to self-test. The outbreak is small by global standards, but China's most populous city has emerged as a tough test of China's elimination strategy. The situation in Shanghai has further jeopardized the zero-COVID strategy here as well. The city converted multiple hospitals, gymnasiums, apartment blocks, other venues into central quarantine sites. The surge in state support for Shanghai comes as residents complain of crowded quarantine centers. Millions confined in their homes are complaining lack of medical and health facilities. Some have begun to question the policies as well. The pressure is rising on city's healthcare workers. They're working around the clock to manage the city's lockdown and deal with the residents' frustrations. Chinese President Xi Jinping has urged the country to curb the momentum of the outbreak as soon as possible. And for more on this, we're now being joined by our correspondent Patrick from Beijing. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, it's a tough test of China's stringent zero-COVID strategy. What can you tell us about the latest COVID policies in Shanghai?
Yeah, it certainly is a tough test. And you mentioned this sort of being small numbers in a global context, but these are massive numbers when you're trying to enforce a COVID-0 approach. And in the last 24 hours, China reported 9,000 cases in Shanghai. As you mentioned, they've been sending military, medical personnel and thousands of regular healthcare workers to try and alleviate the situation in Shanghai. I mean, just to give you a little bit of context on that, at the height of the outbreak in Wuhan, the PLA sent 4,000 of its medical workers into the city, which, as we know, is where the virus was first detected. So the fact that there are 12,000 in total, those sort of numbers are being sort of estimated, gives you an idea of just how desperately authorities are trying to get a hold of the situation. And those frustrations are growing. As we know, this was meant to be a two-phase lockdown. Right. The first phase was supposed to end on Friday, but residents on one side of the city are still being confined to their homes, and the other half are meant to be let out tomorrow, but there's no sign of that happening just yet.
Absolutely. In fact, I was just going to come to that. The military has been sent, over 2,000 personnel of medical services units. Now, how are the people responding to these policies?
Well, I can't say how they're responding to the additional personnel coming in, but you would imagine that they are hoping that, you know, one way or another it's going to end this lockdown. I mean, this has gone on in reality a lot longer than this sort of two-phase lockdown that we talked about. I mean, there are a lot of compounds where people have actually been kept inside their homes for days now, and those frustrations are mounting, and we're seeing social media really littered with cries for help. A lot of videos circulating showing some of the difficulties people are facing, and people are talking about having difficulty accessing food as well as medical care or medicines where necessary. And at the same time, censors seem to be blocking out those calls for help, if you like. And it's been suggested the reason for that is they want to show the rest of the country that there is compliance in Shanghai, when in reality there are lots of instances that suggest that's not the case.
Right. All right, Patrick, thank you so much for your inputs on this. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.